What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Stream Geeks, where today we're
So
coming to
screen
you.
effects.
Sorry, yeah, I think I turned them off finally, so no more lasers. So,
That's not fun, but
well, it kind of threw me off the first time, so I'm kind of okay with with going forward.
I'm fine with that not happening again.
Yeah. Just kind of confusing. So, but yeah, so here today talking about the 1976 classic, The Omen. Dun, 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 dun,
Dun, dun,
dun, dun,
dun.
dun. Currently, let me get my notes open. I had the internet open instead. 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. This made just under $61 million on a $2.8 million budget, which, like, pretty solid. I think I could make a pretty good movie out of $2.8 million. Maybe not today's money, because like back then that was way more than what we were going for. But so before we get too far in, Dan, why don't you tell us how you were introduced to The Omen?
I mean, really, it was just when I was in college, I just sort of was digging around for 70s horror movies. That was kind of when I was trying to move. Um, it's not as fun as it sounds, but like I was trying to move into like I'd seen like Friday the 13th, Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
Nightmare on Elm Street, over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, what else is out there? This is when I started to expand my horror horizons, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started researching movies, and I came across stuff like The Omen, Amityville Horror,
Mm-hmm.
Hellraiser, stuff like that. And so I remember watching it.
Ooh,
Actually,
Hellraiser.
how
That
do you
one's
feel about that
interesting.
one? That's another pod.
Yeah,
That you
we'll save my takes for later.
But yeah, I just it was in college, and I was just digging around looking for more. It doesn't sound like a deep cut now, but at the time it was a deep cut for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
other than those surface, kind of go to
sure.
slashers. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I think just like you, honestly, like, I am, always looking to broaden my horizons and see what else is out there, right? So each of the past couple Halloweens, I've been keeping up with all of the new movies that I'm watching, and honestly, like asking you for a lot of recommendations. And I'm pretty sure you actually turned me on to this one. Not that I hadn't heard of it.
mhm.
There, there was a kid in my class in seventh grade whose unfortunate name was Damien, and everybody gave him such a hard time because, like, none of us had seen it. We were like 12,
Right,
or
yeah.
however old you are in seventh grade, and we gave him such a hard time for it. But anyways, watched this movie for the first time actually this last Halloween season. So this is my second watch in the
Mhm.
last like 6 to 10 months. So an interesting movie. So I'm gonna save. I'm saving. I'm trying to save some of my takes and stuff for later. So,
Right, right, right,
um,
right.
I have less in like this section. Dan and I
Hmm.
we have some structure right to our podcast, but this
Right.
beginning part we're still figuring out what exactly we want to talk about. I wrote a lot of like notes of like kind of I had more like things that I liked and things that I didn't like. And I don't know. I figured we could kind of just like go through some of those. And I think we'll hit some pretty high points.
Okay.
Sound good? All
Sounds
right.
good.
Cool. Let's start with things that I liked before I become super negative. Don't want to be a negative Nancy out here.
Always. You can
Because
always count on Mike to find the negative.
I am a realist and I'm going to find exactly like, good, bad, ugly, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. So, one thing that I really liked was how fast this movie really gets going.
Hmm.
Like that first nanny, she unalives herself in the first 15 minutes of the movie, you know? And
Mhm.
like that's just such a creepy scene. Like you've got like all these kids playing, they're at a party and everything, and then the nanny just like pops out standing over this balcony and said, "Damien, all of this is for you." And then she,
And he's totally unfazed.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. And like he's old enough at this point to know like she's talking to me, right?
Mhm.
Like, this is him being like very conscious of like what is going on. So,
Mhm.
and I think totally side note, I guess, but when you talk about like Damien's character is pretty interesting. Like, I thought, I mean, obviously he's like the Antichrist, right? So,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of different moments where it's like you don't really know what he's thinking. It's kind of like how they were able to make it look like he was like controlling or impacting the things around him without like anything actually really happening,
Mhm.
you know?
And I think this is something I wrote down, but I'll go ahead and say it because it kind of incorporates here too. I think they
Mhm.
wrote I think that was done pretty intentionally too, because I think
Mhm.
the original script was a little more um ambiguous
Mm.
as
Okay.
to his true nature. I think you were always supposed to kind of be like, is he really the
Gotcha.
Antichrist? Like,
Mhm.
is that really who he is and things? And I think like in rewrites and stuff like that, and I think given and I'll talk about this too, I guess, when I mention it too, given the success of things like The Exorcist,
Mhm.
it was like, well, let's just go ahead and lean into it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that wasn't a bad idea, but I
Mhm.
think it did itself a disservice by trying to emulate arguably one of the best, not just horror movies, but one of the better movies
Mhm.
of not just the 70s, but like of all time,
All time.
and I think that
Sure.
it was I think it would have been better served to be a little more ambiguous, but on the same token, like I don't think it's a bad thing that it still leaves that, like you said, you're always kind of wondering, is he doing this? Is this stuff just
Mhm.
happening to him and he happens to be a creepy kid? You know, because yeah,
A
he is
super
definitely
creepy.
creepy,
Super
right?
creepy.
Mhm.
Like the scene where they're oh, did you check that for rats, Dan?
Um, I did not, but I don't taste anything, and it's also not Alani, so I'm just sort of crossing my fingers and hoping for the best.
Me too. I'm rocking a Red Bull tonight. So, but I
You
think the
know,
can's too small. But anyways, um,
we're both risking our lives here for energy,
it's very punk rock of us to do so. Um, the scene
always.
where always the scene where Damien and his mom are going through the like the petting zoo, not the petting zoo, but through the safari zoo thing, and they
Mhm.
get to where like the baboons are, and he's just like smiling out the window at I'm just like, that's terrifying. Like that one of my biggest fears about, hopefully having kids someday is that I'm gonna have a creepy kid
Is
that
that
just
you'll have
does
the Antichrist as a child? I know, me too.
well having the Antichrist specifically hasn't really crossed over my mind, but like you see so many kids just getting possessed and like and it's all like Hollywood, right? But it's like
Mhm.
kids are weird though. Kids are creepy. So
Kids are
that's
creepy,
I guess
man, and Hollywood knows it, you know?
so that's the they certainly like to capitalize off of that for sure. So I guess that's another thing that I did like about it. Like the movie did a really good job of making Damien like just a creepy, creepy character. For having what, like 5 lines throughout the whole movie, he's pretty
Mhm.
terrifying.
Mhm.
And we would be talking about terrifying and kind of setting the scene for that. I think we would be doing the movie a disservice if we didn't talk about the theme and the music. Like
Mhm.
it's incredible. I mean, it won. I wrote down Academy Award, but I think it also won an Oscar. Maybe both. I don't know. Um, but like it did such a good job of just like accompanying some of these really like spooky scenes.
Right. Yeah, and And even too, I did some research on that too. It's like they tried to make it as creepy as possible. Even still, like the Latin sounds
Mhm.
horrifying, but I also saw
Yeah.
where it's like a lot of it's gibberish. Like
Is it really?
it's not
It's just
like you
made up?
can't really. It's not like straight. There's no like straight translation. It's just like this is gonna sound terrifying. Let's put this in here. But it worked. It worked.
For
You know.
for some reason, when you say that, I just picture Monty Python and the Holy Grail and those guys like just saying stuff and hitting
Right.
themselves.
Yeah.
But it's very different, obviously. Different tone, different tone. But yeah, I thought the choir like it super creepy, terrifying.
Hmm.
That's don't hate me, but that's all that I really had on there for things that I really liked.
No, I don't hate you. I know that this is not like in the grand. I like it,
Hmm.
but I
A lot of
also
people do.
understand, and I'm sure you're gonna you'll have your reasons too. But like I'm aware that it's not one of the more popular ones. In fact, I think critics didn't love it at the time,
Hmm.
and a lot of people still don't. And I think even after it was released, I think there was a within like 5 years there was a list. One journalist had a list of like the worst movies he'd ever seen, and he listed The Omen on it.
Yeah.
And so it has never been. It's kind of polarizing, I think.
Hmm.
So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're good. You're good. Some of this stuff you are like is kind of like very nitpicky. But one thing that I thought was just like Gregory Peck did an amazing job in this movie.
Hmm.
But there's no way that he is going to be a father to a like newborn kid. He's like 55 in this movie. He looks old. He's got gray hair everywhere. I'm like, no way. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. This guy's Atticus Finch and other great, great roles and everything. But this guy's not a father to a newborn child.
That's what you didn't buy.
Yeah,
Like
everything
of
else is
everything in
legit.
the movie, you were unconvinced that Gregory Peck was a dad.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't think you were gonna get that nitpicky.
Oh yeah. No, it gets worse. Um Actually, maybe not. Well, falling from the second story. Okay, so some of the action sequences go a little bit
Hmm.
broader. I thought they were pretty tough. I didn't think that, even from a practical effects standpoint in 1976, I thought that we could have seen some better stuff. Like when Damien is like trying to like get out of the car, like when they're on the way to the church, it was just really choppy and like not edited very well. I don't know. There were a lot of those that I thought was kind of like, all right, this is tough. That all that to say, there were some really well done scenes, like when the priest was like walking around in the trees, in the woods and
Yeah.
everything, and the storms
Yeah.
going around, like that, like they did that really, really, really well. But I think there's some opportunities there. And then lastly, my last big one is I thought it was too long. Like I thought, this is a 2-hour movie, and I thought that there were really some like scenes and sequences that were either unnecessary, could have been shortened, or I just thought it was at times, like to be honest, just kind of boring. And like I know that this is kind of a drama horror conglomerate, but
Hmm.
I just thought the pacing was a little bit slow. So those were my big gripes, I think, with the movie. And I
Right.
have a little bit more later on, but
Hmm. So,
so
I
anything to say? I'm sure
do what?
anything to say to those, like your
No, I mean
opinion.
honestly, I gave you a hard time last night and even just now with like your gripes, but that's just what I'm gonna do every single time, whether they're valid or
Yeah,
not. I'm just gonna give you a hard
uh,
time. But
that's fair.
you're not the only one that felt those things. I've read a lot about the movie since I first watched it. This is one of my favorite, like, under the radar horror movies.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think, in large part, I think there were points where it just the pacing feels weird. It's edited a little wonky.
Mhm.
Um, but I also think that it speaks to how good the overall script is in that Gregory Peck was essentially like retired when he took this role, you know, and agreed to do it based solely on like the script and the story, you know.
Gotcha.
And I think part of that is too it gets framed more as a horror movie nowadays, but I think it would have
Mhm.
been like you said, it works more as like a family in crisis type movie.
Mhm.
Um, the supernatural elements kind of muddle it a little bit, whereas I
Sure.
think a movie like Hereditary, I think makes this makes that type of movie fit a little better, like a family in crisis plus supernatural horror, because they're essentially like framed almost the same way. You know,
Yeah,
like a
that's
grieving
true.
family starts with like a death, you know, and they're all kind of doing their own thing and grieving their own way, and you know, it's
Mhm.
kind of like a like parenting too, you know,
Yeah.
parenting a child that it's not how you expected it to be, you know,
Yeah.
and it's how parents deal with that, you know, as they move on. And I think it's also a product of like its time too, like a lot of movies are. You know, the
Mhm.
70s horror was changing. Movies were changing, you know, but like it's a reflection of like,
Sure.
you know, breakdown of institutions like religion and like family.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think framing the movie as like a straight horror movie makes the drama of it feel boring,
Yeah. That's fair.
you know.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I like you, like I think there were times where it drags, but I like the overall atmosphere. I think from beginning to end for me, like the suspense really does feel it feels really the movie feels heavy from like start to
Sure.
finish. You know, and that
Yeah.
ending the ending graveyard scene, you know, could easily have kind of gone off the rails a little bit
Mhm.
because it ends up being kind of, you know, on paper it's kind of cheesy. It's like, oh my god, his mom's a jackal, you know, but like the way that particular scene is done, I feel like it did it really well. That's a really scary
Mhm.
scene to me, you
Sure.
know. And again, I think it was, you know, I think it's unfortunately had to follow The Exorcist as well, which is the better religious themed horror movie. Um,
Yeah.
but all that being said, it may not be the most well known or most talked about or best horror movie. But like
Mhm.
you said, you guys were in like the seventh grade. None of you had seen the movie, but you all knew that the name Damien was like not cool,
Mhm.
creepy, kind of
Yeah.
scary, you know, like in the 666 thing. You know,
Mhm.
you see that over and over and over again, you know, marks on people's bodies like, oh my god, 666. Well, that started with like the Omen.
Yeah.
Um, so
One fun fact. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that's pretty much it. I like the overall vibe. I think it's a
Mhm.
really good suspense movie. Maybe less so horror than some of the other ones. Um, some of the critiques I have are really honestly the same that you have. Just some key scenes feel like they're not edited very well to
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
Um, but Gregory Peck does a great job. The mom does a great job.
She
Even the
does.
nanny,
Mhm.
his second nanny,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, even the dog is
First nanny
terrifying.
wasn't there long enough.
You know, his little guardian. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. 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 Cool.
so.
Cool. 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 Just
Hmm.
some fun, like, kind of changing a little bit, but kind of in the same vein, talking a little bit about The Exorcist, but some interesting things that happened on set with this movie. Like, I don't know
Oh,
if
I
you
love
looked
stuff
into
like
any of
this.
it was wild. So, there are some famous horror movies that had like weird things happening on set, like The Exorcist, Poltergeist, but this movie was also kind of in that realm. So, in 1975, Gregory Peck was flying to London and during the flight, lightning struck his airplane. And then the executive producer's plane was also struck by an airplane, or his airplane was struck by lightning shortly after. Um, let's see what else. Sorry. The Omen producer and director barely avoided bombings during production. On-set animals, like, so I guess the baboons, like those were like the scenes, like the reactions you're getting from the actors and actresses, like, are legit because they started
Mm-hmm.
getting out of control during filming. The dogs, like the Rottweilers that were portraying the hellhounds, like started like attacking their handlers and all that kind of stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
also, Liz Moore, who was assistant to one of the special effects designers, was decapitated in a very similar, like, not similar fashion, but like a car accident that ended up decapitating her,
Right.
very
But
similar
there's like a scene in
to
the
the
movie
death.
where another character gets.
Yeah, yeah. So just like a lot of those different things. Oh, and I'm sorry, the accident happened on Friday the 13th by a road sign that indicated it was 66.6 kilometers away from the town of Omen, Ommen. So just lots of like coincidence, maybe, but also there's some weird, there's some weird stuff going
Mm-hmm.
on. So I love little things like that. But
Yeah, no, I do too. Another fun fact: the guy that played Damien, I think his name's Harvey something,
mhm.
but he got the he got the he got the part because he kicked the director in the groin during his audition. The director asked all the kids, he was like, "Come at me! I want you to act basically like you're unhinged." And he said the kid scratched his face, kicked him in the groin, and after he was done, he said, "Dye his hair black." This is It had blonde curly hair when it started, but they straightened it and dyed it black after that.
Oh my gosh, that
Like
kid
he's got
understood
it.
the
That's
assignment.
him.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Is that all I need to do to get a part in a movie? Just like kick a director in the
Yeah,
nuts? All right, I'm writing that down.
do it.
All right. Any other little things you want to cover before we hop into categories and awards?
No, no, I think
Okay.
I've said pretty much. Let me check my notes here. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Cool. All right, starting us off. Has our boy Dustin Robertson seen this movie?
Well, the answer is no, but he almost had us last night when we were talking about it.
He did. He really had us going there for a second.
Yeah, he sounded so serious. He was like, "I don't like it." Like,
And
wait, have you
we're like,
seen it? He was like, "Yeah, I didn't like it."
if you could
But
have seen our faces on the other side of the Call of Duty chat, we were both like, surprised Pikachu. But
right.
then, no. He was
But
like, no,
upon
I haven't
further
seen it.
investigation, he hasn't seen this movie.
I think you said, tell me something about it. And he was like,
What's your
oh, no, I
favorite part?
haven't.
He was
What's
like,
your
"I've
favorite
never
part?
seen it."
I don't know.
Caved so
And
quick.
and this is not a movie that we could convince him to see. Like some of these, we feel like
Right.
we could bring him in. No,
Mm-hmm.
not this one. Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Exactly.
Disneyfication. Could this be a theme park attraction?
I usually can find a way to make these work. I don't think I can see it here.
No, not at all.
Not really.
So
Um,
I
unless
think
you wanted to make the animals of Animal Kingdom go bananas, and pretend like pretend like you're in that scene.
I'm gonna bring Damien into work tomorrow and see how the
Hmm.
crocodile reacts. Oh my gosh,
Exactly.
that'd be insane.
Hmm.
There were some lizards that like fell from a tree the other day while I was at work. They hit the ground so hard, like I could have sworn that they died, but they just like crawled away, like nothing happened. It was
So resilient, lizards.
really, yeah, man, good old reptiles.
Hmm.
I think I'm gonna disagree with you though. But it's a very specific start type of attraction. So Universal back in the day, they had like a Bates Motel set that you could
Hmm.
visit. Which, fun fact, it was torn down and replaced by Guess what Universal attraction you think replaced it?
Replaced Bates Motel.
Yeah.
Minions.
Day in the Life with Barney.
So the opposite. So many different.
It used to be that was the old like kid zone area, so they had like ET and they had Bates
Mhm.
Motel, and I'm sure there was something else back there. So I think you could do like a set. Like I think if the house was like a walkthrough set where you kind of like saw different things. Um, Speaking of unrelated about the house, did you notice like above the pool table, there's like a terrifying painting that like I went on a deep dive because I was like, what the heck painting is this? Other people also want to know and have these questions, and nobody's been able to determine what it is. So it just looks terrifying.
I'm on it.
All right, if you could find the answer, I would owe you, be forever in your debt. Like they narrowed it down, I think, to one artist, but they couldn't find what it was. But like the faces, because you're seeing it from an angle, but they're all distorted and like they
Hmm.
look like I saw it and I was like, why would an ambassador for the United States like have this in their house? Like it was just weird. But I don't know.
All right, I'll take a look later.
Yeah. No worries, no worries. All right. Our hardest question always. Trading places. If you were to swap one actor or actress from acting history and put them in this movie, who are you choosing and why?
You know, I actually would probably replace. This was tough. I think I'd replace the mom with Toni Collette. What's her name? Lee
Okay.
Remick.
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah.
I was thinking, when I was doing this and I was thinking of the Hereditary comparison, I was like, I mean, it's the same basic like base. I mean, they're different, but like
Hmm.
mothers learning how to parent difficult children in weird and grieving situations, it was like she killed it in Hereditary, and I think that would
Yeah.
translate really well to this movie.
Yeah. That's good. I like that. I like that choice a lot. Um, I also kind of went to like a more modern take for my replacement. I'm actually, which I would not do this. Like I know you said that a couple times in the past. Like I would not make this change because
Hmm.
this guy did a great job. But it was the best one I could think of. So I'm gonna take Gregory Peck out of the movie, which again he did a great job, but I got to answer the question, and I'm gonna put Patrick Wilson in there. I
Okay.
think he's kind of like cemented himself in like the Conjuring and the Insidious movies as kind of like a exorcist father, kind of a charismatic, but and like caring person, dad
Great horror
figure.
dad.
Yeah, and I think that he would do a really good job. Like I don't know if because he's probably a little bit like more joyous than Gregory Peck is, because I think Peck did a really good job of delivering like super serious throughout the whole movie.
Hmm.
But I think Patrick Wilson would be a solid choice.
Hmm. I agree. That's a good choice.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. All right, National Treasure. What are you taking from this movie? From what are you taking from the set?
The dog, his dog,
Ooh, okay, interesting.
the Rottweiler.
That thing was disgusting. It was so mean, but I like
Hmm.
it. I wanted. It was. I mean, it was just. I don't know. Like, there's something about those dogs that was just like, dang. And it was in the rewatch where I realized that like I think I had an idea that Damien was kind of like controlling it, but like actually looking to see that like the hellhounds were um like I or black dogs in general at that time had a negative connotation. And like when you go to the graveyard scene and there's all these dogs there, right? It's like
Hmm.
that's probably like that's not coincidence that all those black dogs are there, like all those
Right.
hellhounds, you know?
Like black dogs have a really strong um history in English folklore in general.
Hmm.
Not just as like
Yeah,
hellhounds, but black dogs have really like history, a pretty deep history. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I've done research before, and I know that they're really spiritually significant.
sure.
So,
Well, I'm just glad that they kind of took some heat off of the black cats because, cats are obviously superior. So it's
mm,
nice that some of the heat comes off the cats a little bit.
mm, mm.
It's not up for debate. Um,
Eh,
all right. I'm taking Damien's tricycle. Like
I almost did that one too.
it's so cool. Like, and I don't know. I guess this is the second most iconic tricycle in cinematic history. First being the one in um, The Shining, the
Hmm.
little kid running around. But I thought it was, I thought it was cool.
Hmm.
That's it. He almost kills his mom with it, which is
It
freaking
does almost
nuts.
kill his mom with it.
Wild. All right, hot date. Who you taking on a hot date?
Gregory Peck,
Okay,
but not as like a date, just
I I got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like a great, like a dinner with an acting great.
yeah, yeah. If you Oh no, we'll save this when you have more planning. But like, if you could take five actors like to dinner, five actors, actresses, like would he make that list? Like top five?
Mm. Mm. I mean, probably. There's a
He's
good. I'd have to think, but
yeah,
I don't. He would be a close six if he didn't make top five. I think
okay, that's fair. I
for me.
sprung this on you just thinking of it like right now, but
Right.
um, I'm going on a real date with Catherine Thorne. Like if I like did a little bit of like digging. I mean, she was pretty in this movie, but like she was on like cover of like Vogue and like all kinds of stuff back in the day.
Hmm.
So, she was very pretty, kind of a looker at the time. So yeah, I'd take
A
her on a date.
real looker.
Real looker. The first nanny is a close second, but fortunately she wasn't in the movie long enough for me to really like.
Right, and we clearly see that she's got some issues too. So
She does. Oh gosh. All right. Bonesaw Award. We're putting it in here. If you could put one wrestler into this film.
this was hard.
Yeah, it was.
Um, the first one that comes to mind is Bray Wyatt, just because he's so creepy. Like his whole persona was built around creepy, which also I did a deep dive.
Okay.
Well, it's more like a medium dive on him, and he took inspiration for one of his characters from Max Cady in the movie Cape Fear, which is another great Gregory Peck movie. So
Okay.
I was like, well, I like that correlation, so that's what we're going to go with. I don't know what he
Yeah.
would play. I think you'd have to create, I don't know, maybe like a somebody that Damien, like an Antichrist super fan or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like a guy that's kind of like been, like watching the signs and knows who Damien is and is kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
religious fanatic, so to speak.
I I thought this one was tough too. I had literally typed definitely a different tone, but sure. Like if I'm gonna put one in, it definitely
Mm,
changes the movie a little bit. But I went with Sting. I went his full makeup, regalia, and everything. I envisioned like, just like I envisioned
Did you just Google creepy wrestlers?
100%. I did.
Like, oh, absolutely.
Oh, I know my face turns red, but then when I see it on screen doing it, it's like, oh my gosh, that's
It's
so
like
red.
you could tell it's red.
I cannot lie to anybody because my face will just be like, um, yeah. I thought he could be a good, like, just like an Insidious where you see the demon creature, like, the
Hmm.
red and black face paint and everything. I thought he could have made a cameo jump scare or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe like bright. Yeah, 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 yeah. Nothing crazy, but
Not like a full role, but maybe like a creepy
yeah.
background character.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like I'm not recasting the photographer as like The Rock or anything crazy like that. So
Sting is the priest, the Undertaker. Is there some way
what if
I
you did
always would like to find a way to figure out how to get Stone Cold into any movie, though.
what if you just recast this whole movie as wrestlers?
Only wrestlers?
Only wrestlers. Insane. The
We don't have
Undertaker
enough
has
time
to
for
be.
that, but I'd like to do that one time. Make one of these categories, recast the whole movie with wrestlers.
We'll do that with a really bad movie.
Yeah, we'll purposely review not a great movie and then recast it entirely out of wrestlers through the ages.
I think it would do well. Oh gosh. All right. Two more categories. The GOAT. Who takes them who wins this movie?
It's got to be Gregory Peck.
I agree. I agree. I thought I think we both kind of mentioned it and kind of talked about it earlier, but he just delivers his lines incredibly well. He sets the tone, I think, for the movie. Like it's already like a very serious movie, but
Hmm.
he I think he carries that, and I think
Hmm.
he does incredibly well. I also considered the guy who did the music, which I can't find his
Jerry
music. His
Goldsmith.
Yes, Jerry
Yeah.
Goldsmith. Just
Yeah,
because.
no, and I think it like Gregory Peck is such a good actor.
Hmm.
Um, one, he's iconic. Two, he's very
Yeah, Daddy
talented.
Finch.
So I think that um, I think his performance is even better, knowing that he purposely chose to come out of semi-retirement to play it. So it's
Yeah.
something that he was committed to it, and he was gonna play it to the best of his ability, and he did it, and I think that it shows. I
Hmm.
think that it shows. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I'm with you. I got nothing else to add. Last category. So, freshest take.
Hmm. I don't even know that I would call it fresh or even that hot, but
Hmm.
I think that this movie would be more. Part of me thinks this would be a more well received or well known movie had it come out before The Exorcist.
Yep.
Um, and just for no other reason other than it's it's. I mean, The Exorcist set an impossible standard for religious themed horror.
Hmm.
And the fact that it came out so soon after that
Hmm.
movie was really fresh in everybody's minds, and so it's
Yeah.
inevitably going to get compared to it. And I just don't think that that's you just can't compare it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, that's
I and I guess my take was I said like there were no fresh takes, that this movie didn't really do anything different because in comparing it to The Exorcist, like I literally almost a less intense the Exorcist. I'm overly unimpressed by The Omen, but I think that, and that's on me probably, and probably like some of the people who watched it back in the day, like for comparing it to a movie like The Exorcist, which I think was scarier. I think like the whole like family dynamic, I thought was a little bit more dramatic. Oh, there, something's up.
There
Oh,
it is. There it is.
didn't turn them all off.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, scarier. I think the family dynamic is more like it's tougher. I think in The Exorcist than it is in this movie. Um, I I don't know. Like it was good. Well done. I was probably a little too
Hmm.
harsh on it in my I reviewed it on Letterboxd and gave it 2.5 out of 5. And that was low. Like that's where I put Saltburn, and this movie was
That's
better than Saltburn.
again with the salt burn.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd watch that movie again. No, never mind. Anyways, um I thought that I did have like one second one though, like that I thought was interesting. I really liked the use of the photographer as like almost like an accidental witness to all of this,
Hmm.
right? Like he is kind of the mastermind to figuring out like he's the observer. He sees the pictures and development and everything.
Hmm.
And I think it's kind of cool that we see like I guess like an average person be the one to discover that Damien truly is like the Antichrist,
Hmm.
or at least to like push in that direction. So
Right.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's it. That's all I got. Any any last thoughts on the Omen, fun facts, or anything like that?
Um, the only other thing that I have is
Mm-hmm.
that when I was doing research, I came across a quote from like John Carpenter that said like
Mm,
horror is not just like an emotion or a genre. It's like a reaction, you
sure.
know. And I think maybe what makes The Omen not as popular is that it is a reaction to a lot of the stuff going on in the 70s, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
enough of a reaction to register. Whereas like other movies were doing it better, like Texas
Mm-hmm.
Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween,
Yeah.
Exorcist. Um, and so while I don't, like you said, I don't think it's a bad movie, but I don't think it was good enough at the time, and maybe not even, maybe a little more so in retrospect. But I don't think I guess it didn't do enough to set it apart um, from those other movies.
Yeah. I mean, but certainly impactful enough. Like, I mean, the first Omen just came out, what,
Hmm.
2 days ago? So, like sequels are coming out, remakes are coming out.
Right.
So, like, even though it may not have been as well received as it could have been,
Hmm.
it's still impactful enough to still be around to this day.
Right.
So,
And we know, like you said, like even people who've never seen it know that like Damien is the name of the kid in the movie The Omen, which is a
mhm.
movie about the Antichrist.
Yeah,
You know, so whether you like it or not, it's still influential and still a part of pop culture and horror and general film history. A really big
yeah,
part of it.
yeah. So awesome, good stuff. I overall, yeah, 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 yeah. Don't wanna beat this movie anymore. So, uh, but as always, fun talking about movies. Fun talking with you, Dan. Always good breaking some stuff down, and I hope that the listeners, viewers, all those kind of things out there. Hope you guys are enjoying it as well. As always, appreciate you guys tuning in and interacting with us on socials or in person, whatever that may be. So love to continue hearing feedback, positive, negative, things you want to hear more of. Maybe
Hmm.
you want me to just remove myself from the podcast and listen to Dan, like I'm here for it. I'll take that for the team if I need
I'm
to,
not.
but
I that y'all may. I don't think anybody wants that, but even if you did, I don't think I have it in me to talk for 45 minutes straight. Oh, it would be a much shorter podcast.
it would. I talk too much. So, all right. Well, as always, appreciate you guys.
Now
Now
this is
this is
podcasting.
podcasting.
I was better that time.